Every morning, I woke up to the sound of my daughter crying like someone had died. Not sniffling, not a few quiet tears, full body sobbing, the kind that comes from somewhere deep, the kind that makes the walls feel thinner, the kind that makes a father stop breathing for a second before his feet even hit the floor. And every morning, before I opened her bedroom door, I had the same thought. What happened to her? Because this wasn't normal heartbreak. This wasn't stress from school. This wasn't a bad week. My daughter was 20 years old, lying in bed in the middle of the day, crying because she didn't have a billionaire boyfriend. And the worst part was, she meant it. I'm 47. My wife is 46. She's not my daughter's biological mother, but she's been in her life since she was 13. Her mother and I divorced when she was 12 because of alcoholism. And that year was hard enough. I thought we'd survive the worst of it. I thought the storms we'd face after that would be ordinary ones. Exams, bad relationships, the usual mistakes young people make when they're trying to become themselves. But this was something else. For almost a year, my daughter had become obsessed with one idea. Not interested in it, not joking about it, obsessed. She was going to marry a billionaire, not a rich man, not a successful partner, a billionaire. In her mind, that was the only life worth having, the only future that counted, the only version of happiness she would accept. At first, I thought it was a phase, social media nonsense, a glamorous fantasy she'd grow out of the moment real life demanded something of her. But she didn't grow out of it. She sank into it. It got into everything. Her grades started slipping, then collapsing. Conversations became impossible. You couldn't ask her about university without it somehow circling back to yachts, private jets, gated villas, old money, high-value men. She talked about luxury like it was oxygen, like she had been born into the wrong life and had finally discovered the only acceptable escape route. She'd sit there at the table, phone in hand, eyes half distant, and say things like, "I just know I'm meant for more than this." And every time she said this, I had to fight the urge to ask, more than what? More than a safe home? More than parents who love you? More than an education people would kill for? More than a life where no one has ever made you wonder if the lights would stay on? But I bit my tongue, because anger wasn't going to fix whatever this was. Then I started finding things out, not from her, from other people. A friend mentioned seeing her in a hotel bar, alone, dressed up, drinking, waiting. One of my colleagues pulled me aside with that uncomfortable smile people wear when they don't want to embarrass you, but know they're about to. "I thought you should know, your daughter messaged me." I frowned. "Messaged you what?" He hesitated. "On LinkedIn." LinkedIn. I remember just staring at him. He actually looked apologetic. It got strange. He showed me. Suggestive messages, flirty language, a tone that made my skin crawl, not only because I was her father, but because I knew exactly what she was doing. Testing, fishing, reaching for anyone she thought looked glamorous enough to pull her upward. One of them she had asked to buy her jewelry, on LinkedIn. I felt this hot wave of humiliation, but underneath that was something worse. Fear, because this wasn't just embarrassing anymore. It wasn't just shallow, it was reckless. And then there was my wife's brother. He's very well off. The kind of well off that people notice the second they step into his house. Beautiful property, privacy, taste. The kind of life social media turns into fantasy fuel. My daughter started trying to get closer to him and his family. At first it seemed harmless, visiting more often, asking questions, lingering. Then one day she posted selfies from inside their home on social media. Not just harmless little family photos. The kind of pictures that told strangers exactly what luxury looked like from the inside. That was the end of that. They banned her from the house, privacy violation. And still it didn't stop. Any friend, any relative, any acquaintance with a slightly more polished life became a target. She wanted proximity to wealth, the way some people want warmth in winter. Desperately, visibly, without shame. And that was what terrified me most. Because my daughter is not stupid. That's what made this so hard to understand. She had always done well in school until recently. She got into a good university. She speaks multiple languages. When she was 16, she wrote a book and made it successful. Not cute for a teenager successful, actually successful. She had talent, discipline, a mind. So I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What happened? What got inside her? How does a bright, capable young woman start acting like her whole existence depends on whether some rich man chooses her? Then she came to stay with us temporarily while looking for a new apartment, and everything got worse. For 4 or 5 days straight, she barely got out of bed. Curtains closed, food untouched, makeup smeared into the pillow. She cried because the places she had to stay weren't glamorous enough. She cried because she didn't have the life she thought she deserved. She cried because no billionaire had appeared to rescue her from the unbearable tragedy of being ordinary. It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, I know that. But when you hear your child crying like that, it stops being ridiculous. It becomes disturbing, then unbearable. One morning I stood outside her door with my hand on the knob, listening. My wife stood behind me in the hallway. She's at it again, she whispered. I opened the door. My daughter was curled into herself, face red, hair tangled, clutching a blanket like she was freezing. I sat on the edge of the bed. Hey, I said softly, talk to me. She didn't look at me. There's nothing to talk about. There is. You've been crying every day. She pressed the blanket harder to her face. I just can't do this. Can't do what? This life. Something in me tightened. What does that mean? She turned her head then, eyes swollen, voice breaking. I'm never going to have what I want. I tried the gentle approach first. Of course I did. I told her she was young. I told her life doesn't happen all at once. I told her one day she'd meet someone who loved her deeply, someone kind, someone real. She looked at me with actual disgust. Yeah, she snapped, but he'll probably be broke, so I don't care. That landed hard. I stared at her. There are moments as a parent when you realize comfort is doing nothing, that every soft word is being swallowed by something much uglier and much louder. So I changed tactics. I said, listen to me. There are very few billionaires in the world. Most of them are already married, and many of them marry within their own circles. The odds of this happening are almost zero. She stared at me like I had slapped her. My wife, who had been standing near the doorway, immediately stiffened. You didn't have to say it like that, she said. I turned to her. Say what? The truth? She's upset. She's delusional. My daughter sat up, furious now through her tears. Why are you trying to ruin this for me? Because it's ruining you first. Dad, no, you're not just dreaming. You're chasing older men in hotel bars. You're messaging people you don't know. You're crossing boundaries with family. Your grades are falling apart. This is not harmless. My wife stepped in. She's young. Young people fantasize. Not like this. My daughter's face hardened. You don't get it. You're right, I said. I don't. I don't understand why you think your life is worthless unless some rich man validates it. The room went dead silent. Her expression changed then. Not just anger, hurt, shame. She turned away from me and started crying again. But this time she did it quietly, and somehow that felt worse. That should have been the end of it for the day. It wasn't. Because once I said it out loud, once I admitted to myself that this had gone beyond fantasy, I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I started looking. I reached out to therapists. It was Sunday, so no one got back to me. I would have taken any appointment, any opening, any person with credentials and a pulse, if they could help me make sense of this. Then I went through her social media. All of it was public. That alone made my stomach sink. I found one account, then another, then another. Different usernames, same face. She had followed herself from each one, which was the only reason I found them all. And what I saw there made me feel like I was looking at a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Video after video. Reposts from female influencers wrapped in glamour and poison. Women talking into cameras with perfect hair and dead eyes, saying things like, a rich man will choose a poor but skinny waitress over an overweight CEO. Women laughing about broke men like poverty was contagious. Women preaching that men cannot love, that women should stop looking for romance and start securing resources. Shopping hauls, designer bags, Cartier boxes, men's hands dropping keys into manicured palms, tutorials on how to become irresistible to provider men, advice on body type, face shape, silence, submission, performance. One woman screamed at the camera, "Wake up, stop dating brokies." And there it was, the language, the worldview, the infection. I kept scrolling, my hands getting colder. There were photos of my daughter in expensive restaurants, not normal nice places, places where dinner looked like architecture and cost more than some people spend in a week. 11-course tasting menus, crystal glasses, candlelight, the kind of places she absolutely could not afford, so someone else was paying. There was a post where she spoke directly to camera, calm and certain, saying women who prioritize looks are trashy, and that real high-value women go for a man's resources, not his face. I actually had to stop and put the phone down. I remember staring at the wall and thinking, who taught you to speak like this? Then I found something worse, a post about some content creator club, a coaching program, 500 euros paid to some Russian influencer whose entire brand revolved around rich men, glow-ups, luxury, and getting famous online. 500 euros. My daughter had paid that out of her savings, or money I'd given her. The woman sold coaching sessions to girls desperate to become rich and visible. It looked like a scam, it smelled like a scam, but to girls like my daughter it was hope in a polished package. I kept reading. My daughter had posted about the sessions publicly. Positioning, curating an image, becoming the kind of woman wealthy men notice. I felt sick, not because she wanted nice things. Everyone likes nice things, because she was being trained to turn herself into bait. That evening I asked her to make her accounts private. She looked suspicious. Why? Because the whole world doesn't need access to your life. For a second I thought she'd fight me, then surprisingly she nodded. Fine. That was the first moment in days that gave me even a sliver of hope. Later I asked if we could talk. Not argue, talk. She agreed. We sat in the living room. My wife stayed nearby at first, then drifted into the kitchen, close enough to hear if voices rose, far enough to give us space. My daughter sat curled into the corner of the sofa, arms folded, defensive, fragile, angry, exhausted. I took a breath. You're an adult, I said. You make your own choices. Who you date, where you go, what you want from life, that's yours. She said nothing, but I'm concerned about you. Her eyes flicked up to mine, then away. I'm trying to understand what's happening. Still silence. So I tried a different angle. What kind of men are you going out with? Her shoulders tensed. You don't have to tell me everything, I said. But if something is happening that puts you at risk, I need to know enough to help you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said very flatly, older. How much older? 30 to 60. I felt something ugly move through me. 30 to 60. My daughter was 20. For one brief second, I saw every possible terrible headline. Every story you hear and pray will never have your child's face attached to it. Every man with money and entitlement and a taste for girls young enough to mistake danger for luxury. I kept my voice steady. Do you feel safe with them? She shrugged. I'm not stupid. That answer did not comfort me. I know you're smart, I said. Smart people get manipulated too. She rolled her eyes. Dad, please. No, listen to me. Money doesn't make men safe. Power can make them dangerous. The kind of man who wants a woman your age because she's easy to impress is not a man you should trust. She crossed her arms tighter. I know what I'm doing. Do you, I thought? Do you really? Because from where I was sitting, my daughter was trying to negotiate with a fantasy while standing at the edge of a cliff. I told her the truth. That kind of life can cost you your autonomy, your education, your peace. You think you're chasing comfort, but you could end up financially trapped by someone who sees you as an accessory. She gave a bitter little laugh. I'm too smart for that. Of course she thought that. Everyone thinks that right up until they're not. I brought up stories, cases. Women pulled into worlds they thought were glamorous and came out broken if they came out at all. I asked if she had read about any of the girls who ended up in situations far darker than they imagined. She looked bored. It slid right off her. That was when I realized facts alone weren't going to crack this open. There was something underneath it, something emotional, something humiliating, something she couldn't say. So I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for days. Why are you crying like this? She looked at me startled. I leaned forward. Not the surface answer, not because I want a rich husband. Why are you actually crying? Her mouth trembled. Did something happen? She looked down. My pulse spiked. I heard my own voice change. Did someone hurt you? She said nothing. I felt ice pour into my body. My mind went to the worst place instantly, because that's what a father's mind does. It doesn't tiptoe. It jumps straight to violence, to revenge, to names and faces and what object in the garage would fit best in your hands if somebody touched your child. I could barely breathe. I said more sharply now, did someone do something to you? Not the dramatic crying from before. This was different, messier, more ashamed. I stayed still, forced myself to stay still. She cried for what felt like forever. 15 minutes, maybe more. I waited. I didn't push. I didn't interrupt. Finally, she wiped her face and tried to speak. "A year ago," she whispered, "me and my friends snuck into this party." I said nothing. It was at a fancy hotel. Of course it was. We had drinks, food, we just blended in. Her voice cracked, and all the men were into her. I blinked. She kept going, words tumbling now. "There was this guy I liked. I watched him all night. I thought maybe he was looking at me too, and then he asked for her number." She started crying again. I sat there stunned, trying not to show it. She pressed on. It kept happening, again. We'd go places and they'd choose her. They'd talk to her first. They'd buy her things. They'd notice her. Every sentence sounded like a knife she had been turning in herself for months. Then came the next part. "There was this guy at university," she said, "a little older, in our program. His family is really rich. Like, really rich." Her face twisted. "And we both liked him." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She knew I liked him," my daughter said. "She knew. And then she started going after him too. Her breathing got ragged. She spread rumors about me. She tried to sabotage my weight loss. She wanted me to look worse. She wanted him to choose her." I stared at her. "And now they're together," she whispered. "Like seriously together." Then she looked up at me with this expression I will never forget. It was childish and broken and venomous all at once. I was robbed. The room went completely still. That should have been my future. There it was. Not trauma in the way I had feared. Not assault, not coercion, not blackmail. Humiliation, envy, rejection, obsession. A fantasy had attached itself to a real person, and when that person chose someone else, the whole fantasy shattered. And instead of mourning the man, she was mourning the life she imagined he would have given her. I asked carefully, "That's what this is about?" She nodded, sobbing. "You're grieving him?" "No," she snapped, almost offended by the suggestion. Then through tears, "I'm grieving what I lost." But she had never had it. That was the most terrifying part. She had built an entire emotional collapse around something that had only ever existed in her imagination. I asked the question anyway, because I needed to be sure. "No one forced you into anything? No one touched you? No one hurt you physically?" She shook her head. "No." "You're sure?" "Yes." She even told me awkwardly and defensively that she wasn't sexually active, as if that somehow proved she had stayed in control. I leaned back and looked at her, this beautiful, intelligent, heartbroken girl who had somehow become convinced that another woman's relationship was the theft of her destiny. And I didn't know what to feel first. Relief, confusion, sadness, anger. Because yes, bullying can hurt. Betrayal can hurt. Being compared and overlooked can cut deep, especially at 20, especially in a world that teaches girls their value is visual and transactional. But this reaction still felt too big, too consuming, too warped. It was as if social media had handed her a script for womanhood, and she had followed it all the way to self-destruction. I asked, "What about university?" She sniffed and looked away. "I'll retake the courses." "Will you?" "Yes," but she said it like someone promising to clean up after a party while the house is still on fire. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to turn back time and intercept every video, every influencer, every poisonous phrase that had lodged itself in her head before it became belief. Instead, I said, quietly, "You need help." She didn't fight me. That surprised me more than anything. After a long pause, she whispered, "Maybe." Another pause. Then, "Okay." Just that. "Okay." It wasn't a breakthrough. It wasn't healing. It wasn't some cinematic moment where she suddenly understood how much more she was worth than all this. But it was the first crack in the wall. That night after she went to bed, I sat alone for a long time. My wife came in and stood beside me. "How did it go?" she asked. I rubbed my face. "Bad, better, I don't know." She sat down. "What happened?" I told her, the party, a friend, the rich student, the rumors, the jealousy, the grief over a future that never existed. My wife listened without interrupting. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "She's really lost," she said. I nodded. I thought about all the things my daughter had already accomplished. The languages, the book, the university place, the mind she had, the life she could still build with her own hands if she could just stop chasing someone else's wallet long enough to see herself clearly. And I thought about the world she's growing up in, a world where girls are told to brand themselves before they know themselves, a world where luxury is sold as identity, a world where love is mocked, tenderness is weakness, and high value means how successfully you can turn your body and youth into leverage. A world where being chosen by wealth looks, to some of them, like the highest possible proof that they matter. I hate that world. I hate how easily it gets inside them. I hate that my daughter can cry for days over not being glamorous enough, while standing on a foundation so many people would call privilege. But mostly, I hate that underneath all that vanity and delusion, what I really heard was something much older and sadder. Why wasn't I chosen? Why wasn't I enough? That question has destroyed better people than my daughter, and now I'm left sitting with this strange, painful truth. My daughter is not just chasing a billionaire. She is chasing the feeling that if someone powerful, wealthy, untouchable chooses her, then all her insecurities will finally go quiet. But they won't, because if you don't believe you're enough before the mansion, before the jewelry, before the private jet, you won't believe it after either. You'll just cry in a bigger bedroom. She agreed to therapy. That's where we are now. No miracle, no neat ending, no lesson learned overnight. Just a young woman still standing too close to a fantasy, and a father trying to pull her back before she gives away too much of herself to it. And I keep wondering the same thing. If an entire generation is being taught that love is for fools and wealth is the only real safety, then how many more daughters are out there crying in secret for lives they were told to worship, not even realizing what it's costing them to believe it?